Alright, I know this has probably been covered before, but I do not have it on my channel, so I'm going to go ahead and add it while I am doing this. I'm testing out a new camera. I went ahead and purchased a cheap on brand from Walmart, a 1080p webcam. Kind of wired it up so we can have it right above our workspace here. So this is going to be just the knockoff Aladdin Modchip install. Install the pin header, check our revision here, our motherboard revision, and then we're going to have to replace those caps at some point. This one obviously is bad. I don't know how well you can see in the video, but these, oh, you can see it a little bit with that light gleaming off, but these are starting to bulge. Another thing I noticed when I opened this up is the color of our clock capacitor over here. This was a previously open system before I purchased it, and somebody has gone ahead and actually replaced that capacitor with a better one. I usually just remove them, but this one's been replaced and it looks to be in good condition. I don't see any other caps that are starting to bulge, so we will only be replacing the CPU caps on this one, and hopefully that gets rid of our intermittent boot and frag. Sometimes it'll boot, sometimes it won't have any power at all, sometimes it'll just flash. So we're going to be installing the knockoff Aladdin Modchip. They work perfectly well for basic mods. So the next thing we need to check is our motherboard revision. We have a focus video chip over here, which is going to give us a 1.4 or a 1.5. Now, I don't believe the 1.5 exists. We're going to find out here in a minute. If you have a Koenigsegg video chip, could be a 1.0 to 1.3. If it's a 1.0, you're going to have a fan on top of your graphics card heatsink here. If it does not have the fan, but it has a plug back here, oops, you can't see that in the video, this damn light, if it has a plug right here, kind of similar to your fan connector, it's going to be another fan connector for that that GPU fan that sits on top of the heatsink. So we're going to go ahead, put our multimeter down, try to get this all in the screen here. I apologize for the glare off the light. I gotta have a workspace light. My basement's fairly dark, so we're gonna go ahead and move this over to continuity mode. Two things to check. I mean, one thing to check, really. You can check both if you'd like. We're gonna go right here from pin 2 to ground. We have continuity. This is a 1.4. If you have a 1.5, pin 2 to ground, you're not going to get anything. The next thing we need to do is count up. So 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, pin 9, and then we're going to come down to right there's our 3.3 volts, and so we do have 3.3 volts from the motherboard to the LPC port, as well as ground from pin 2 to ground. So now we've identified this as a 1.4 model. Go ahead and set my multimeter off to the side because we're done with that for now. I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way just so I can have a little bit more space for a second. Actually, let me bring that back. It's an auto focusing, so it might take a minute to focus. Oh, there it goes. So if we look right here, we do not have an open port on the LPC port. So now we're going to move this. So with that in the same orientation, here's our pin header. Okay, we're going to come up. If you're looking at it straight on, if you had that Xbox sitting the same way I do with pin 2 facing you, you're going to come up on the left side, go up to the second pin, grab a pair of wire cutters or something you can grab a hold of. I actually broke this pair, so it's kind of a pain getting that in there, but we are going to just wiggle that pin out. We don't need that pin. And so now we can bring this back down, and we are going to set this into the LPC port from pin 2 going up. The next thing you're going to want to do is get a piece of masking tape. This is really gonna help. Put it over the top of that pin header and just tape it down. That way when we go to flip this board over, that's not falling out. You're not trying to hold it with your fingers, burning the crap out of your fingers. And now we're actually gonna change that. Make sure you guys can see it. Okay, you can see it. There's not a whole lot of glare over there. Next thing you're going to want to do is get some flux. I just use a paintbrush for my little bucket of Kingbo flux here. Generously apply some flux. Clean off your soldering tip, get it all tinned up. So now we're going to go through and we're going to touch up on all these pins. Come down, touch your pin, feed that solder into it. Looks like a nice solid connection. Make sure you're heating up that pin. Don't be just heating the solder. We don't want cold solder joints here. Nice, shiny solder joints. Make sure you guys can see that in the video all right. I mean, you can. I might have to switch the orientation of this camera a bit. It's just a hobby of mine. I'm not looking to, you know, go all out and buy super expensive stuff. I only have time to do this in the winter months due to work, which I actually have a conference call here in about an hour, so we'll have this Xbox all done and ready to go before then. Clean the solder tip a bit. Alright, now we're just going to kind of look. They all look really good. That one looks a little cloudy, so I'm just going to touch on that one real quick. Pretty good. Alright, so just double check. Make sure you've got some good solder joints there. Inspect them. Make sure we've got enough. Make sure they're all making connection, and they look great. This still needs clean. We do have some dust bunnies floating around, but it was a lot worse. A lot worse before we started. This will get completely wiped down in isopropyl alcohol. I just figured, what's the point in completely cleaning it with alcohol if I'm going to have to clean it again to get the residue of this flux off of the board, especially with replacing those capacitors. So now that we have the pin header soldered in, we can go ahead and get rid of our tape, and that's all done. Now the next thing we need to do, set this off to the side real quick. Get our Modchip. We still have to solder D0 on there. We're going to let that cool down in that area and focus on this real quick. I already have it done for another Modchip. I have a lot of Xboxes I have to do, and this is kind of a pain to show on camera because of how small this is. Anyway, we're going to go, if you're using the Aladdin, the knockoff Aladdins, I get these from AliExpress. I've had zero issues with them. They're like $5 to $8 a pop. They're perfect. You can reflash the chip. I did have some issues flashing them in the Xbox, and I have another video already on my channel about this, but this little programmer right here, flawless, works perfect every single time, can't complain. Alright, so anyway, back to this. You're going to come from your corner pin here, solder from there, put some solder on here, solder to this third pin up, and then it's going to look either like that. I'm seeing that damn light. Can kind of see it. It's a little, this autofocus on this camera isn't working as well as it should, but we have it soldered from there to there. Same thing with this one over here. Now there you go, you can kind of see that from there to there. That's all we're doing. Perfect. So the next thing we need to do is get this back down. Alright, so little bit different with your 1.0 models because there's going to be one extra pad. But we're going to come down. Where'd my little screwdriver go? We're going to look at this row right here. Okay, so we're going to come down 1, 2, 3, and we're going to solder from that third one over to that ground block. So I don't like to use my brush for these small connections, so I just get a little toothpick. Gonna go ahead and put some solder there. Come over here. We're gonna peel this up about halfway, a little over halfway. Kind of tuck it out of the way like that. Some solder down there. Now let's go ahead and a little bit of solder. Looks good. Alrighty, so there's that. I had a little piece of wire out. So it doesn't matter how long this wire is, but we do want to try to keep it fairly short. Alright, come through, give it a little snip. I'm using a 30 gauge for this. I use it for all my Modchip installs. It works really well. You can buy, what is this, a 6-pack roll. And I've had this for the better part of a year now. But again, I only have time to do this in the winter months. So I mean, it lasted me all last winter. So far, quite a ways into this winter. Just going to dip that in some flux over there. And what I like to do here is ceramic tip tweezers. Which side do we want? We're going to go with that side. And then tin up your soldering iron. We're just going to tin the ends of these wires real quick. Alright. Now we're going to come in. Come down to our third one. It's not one to stick. There we go. Not sure how well you guys could see with my hand in the way. It's just trying to get that on camera. But now our D0 has been soldered. What that is essentially doing is now telling the Xbox to boot from this LPC port versus trying to boot from that original BIOS. So now that that's pin header's been soldered in, D0 has been soldered in. Flip this bad boy over. Grab your Modchip that already has, this is essentially D0 on the Modchip. This is telling it to always boot, always stay on, don't shut off. Go ahead, flip that upside down right there. And if you've got capacitors over here that are getting in the way a little bit, you can just bend them a little bit. And now, I mean, it is still rubbing, but it's really not going to make a huge difference. So this is the Aladdin XT 2. And this is a 1.4 Xbox, so this is how you do it moving forward for every 1.4. The only difference for, you know, if you do find a 1.5, you'll have to go make a connection. Let's pull this up here. Make a connection from that pin 2 to your ground block, and then pin 9 to 3.3 volts. So I'm gonna go ahead and end this. Go ahead and get these capacitors replaced, get it powered up for a little bit, heat up this thermal paste, get this thermal paste replaced. It's just a lot easier to do once the console's been heated up, and then get it cleaned off and test it out. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and stop the video. If you have any questions, comment below. I will put links to certain things on my website pertaining to the Xbox. It's a free Wix website. I've mentioned in a previous video that YouTube has started flagging Mediafire links. They've started flagging GitHub links. They've started flagging anything that they might see as suspicious. And I don't want to take the risk of my account getting banned. I already had a strike last year. I don't want to strike. I don't want to do anything that is against YouTube's terms of use. But some of this stuff, their AI picks it up and it's like, oh, it's malicious. Like, no, it's not. You guys need to actually hire some people and go in and take a look at these things versus just having your AI flag it. But it is what it is. But everything moving forward will be on my Wix website for the foreseeable future until I decide to do something different. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and stop this. Thanks for watching.